Today's lesson is Deadly Oddity, some strange facts about the Portuguese man of war. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're going to be talking about a creature from the ocean. We're going to continue talking about this kind of deadly creature. It's a deadly oddity. It's rather strange and unusual, so you got to be careful. And, of course, we're talking about the Portuguese man of war. Now, we began our lesson last time by talking about why it's called this. That is rather a strange and unusual name for a sea creature, the Portuguese man of war. I would have thought with a name like that, it would actually have come from Portugal itself.
No, of course it doesn't. It lives in the oceans of the world, and the name came along because quite possibly the sight of the gas-filled bladder of this creature made people think of Portuguese men of war, these fighting sailing ships from the 15th and 16th centuries. Just the similarity between the look of the Portuguese man of war and the actual real ship made people make that connection. Or it could also be tied to the Portuguese soldiers' helmets from that time, which also, in some ways, similarly look like a Portuguese man of war as it drifts along the surface of the ocean. Let's get into today's article and we'll find out some more interesting facts about the Portuguese man of war.
It feeds on fish that get too close. The man-of-war's tentacles are used to attack its prey, which consist mainly of tiny fish, plankton, and shrimp. The sting delivered by the tentacles paralyzes the prey, and the tentacles then reel the meal upwards to be digested.
大家好，我们来看第一部分中的 prey 这个名词的意思是猎物或是被捕食的动物。例如 The tiger moved silently towards its prey, trying not to disturb it. 老虎静静地朝它的猎物前进，尽量不去惊扰它。或者 Snakes can open their jaws wide enough to swallow their prey whole. 蛇可以将嘴张得很大，以吞下整个猎物。接下来介绍动词 paralyze， 它的意思是使麻痹或是使瘫痪。可以说 The insect's venom paralyzes its prey. 这种昆虫的毒液会瘫痪它的猎物。又或者说 Selma sat stiff in front of the horror film that paralyzed her with fear. Selma 僵直地看着这部恐怖片，吓得动也不动。
Okay, it's time for us to discuss the first part of our lesson for today. The point here is it feeds on fish that get too close. So here we've got the phrase to feed on. Basically, that refers to what it eats. It eats fish that get too close because it needs those fish in order to consume them, to eat them, and get energy and to continue living.
That's exactly right. So don't touch those tentacles or you might end up being eaten. Well, that is if you're a tiny fish. It says the man of war's tentacles are used to attack its prey, which consists mainly of tiny fish, plankton, and shrimp. So these are not man-eaters. They're tiny fish eaters. That is their prey, tiny fish, plankton, and shrimp. The prey of an animal is the animal that this animal hunts. In nature, we often have predators and we have prey. We have the hunters and then we have the hunted. We have the ones with the big long teeth and the ones with the tasty flesh that the ones with the big teeth eat. So if you're a lion in Africa, you are a predator. You are a hunter. If you are a deer, antelope, a zebra, possibly even an elephant or a giraffe, you might be the prey of the lion. All right? It is hunting those animals to eat. The animals that is hunting and eating, once it catches them, are its prey. So the prey of the Portuguese man of war are tiny fish, very, very small fish. Plankton, these are also tiny creatures, very basic, simple little creatures, kind of like shrimp, krill, things like that, very, very small. But whales also feed on plankton, as do many other type of fish. And shrimp, which are also, of course, quite small. Many of them come in different sizes, but there are a lot of little shrimp out there, little plankton, and little fish. That is what the Portuguese man of war likes to eat.
Right. The shrimp, of course, is the noun form for the creature that we often eat when we're having seafood. And you can say shrimp as the plural, but you could also say shrimps. I've heard both forms, and both forms are acceptable. So these are some of the things that the man-of-war feeds on. The sting delivered by the tentacles paralyzes the prey, and the tentacles then reel the meal upwards to be digested. Ooh, I don't want to be caught by those tentacles there. Of course, when they use their tentacles, they will sting you. To sting, there is a verb, but it could also be the actual sting itself, which is a noun. So the sting which the tentacles deliver will paralyze the prey. So here we've got the word paralyze, which means it affects the central nervous system of those creatures, and they just can't move. They are sitting ducks.
So it kind of freezes the prey, and then it is able to reel it in or pull it in. When you reel in something, think of a fisherman, a fisher person, turning that wheel that sort of winds back the line that the fish is on the end of. They are reeling in that fish, and actually that roll of fishing line that they are spinning around, that is also called a fishing reel. All right, so if you're reeling something in, you're kind of pulling it in, possibly using some kind of round object to kind of wrap the rope or string or whatever it is you're pulling in, wrap it around that. That's the reel, and that action of pulling it in is reeling it in. So if you've ever been lucky enough to catch a fish, before you can eat the fish, you have to get the fish out of the water, and that usually involves reeling the fish into the boat or the beach or wherever you happen to be standing. So it reels or pulls the meal upwards, and then it begins to digest the meal. The meal will be reeled upwards to be digested. When you eat food, once you put it in your mouth, you start to chew it, and then you swallow it, and then it goes into your stomach, and it starts to become digested. That is when your body, using different chemicals, breaks down the food and gets the nutrients out, gets rid of the waste. It gets all that energy into your system. That all happens because you are digesting your food. Food that is being digested is basically being processed by your body in order to get energy from it. So there you go. I guess I'm glad I'm not a tiny little fish right now. All right, let's pause here and listen to the second middle part of our article.
As dangerous as it is, it's not invincible. Despite its deadly sting, some creatures do manage to turn the tables on the man-of-war with its many predators including sea turtles, sunfish, and sea slugs. In fact, while eating a man-of-war, a sea slug can even store the man-of-war's toxic cells in its own skin to use in its defense. In contrast, the skin of loggerhead turtles, including that on their tongues and throats, is simply too thick for man-of-war stings to penetrate, allowing the turtles to gobble men-of-war down without injury.
第二部分来看的是单字 invincible， 这个形容词指的是不可战胜的或是无法阻挡的。例如 The hero of the movie had superpowers that made him almost invincible. 电影中的英雄拥有超能力，几乎所向披靡。或是 The football team seems invincible on the field under the coach's strategy. 在教练的策略下，该足球队在球场上似乎所向无敌。接着我们看到 toxic 这个形容词，它表示有毒的或是引起中毒的。例如 The factory caught fire and created a toxic cloud of smoke. 该工厂失火而产生了一团有毒烟雾。或是 James had to go to hospital as he ate a toxic mushroom. James 因为吃了毒菇而必须就医。下一个是动词 gobble， 指的是狼吞虎咽或是大口大口的吃。例如 The dog gobbled up all of the food that had fallen to the floor. 狗吃光了掉在地上的所有食物。也可以说 Since she hasn't eaten any food all day, Rachel gobbled down late-night snacks after she got home. 由于一整天都没吃东西， Rachel 到家后就狼吞虎咽地吃起了宵夜。
Okay, it's time for us to discuss the middle part of our article for today. And the point here we're talking about is, as dangerous as it is, it's not invincible. If you're invincible, that means you cannot be defeated, you cannot be killed. or beaten in any way. And here it says, as dangerous as it is, or even though it is very dangerous, it is not invincible. It still can be vulnerable. It can still be attacked by other creatures.
Okay, well, let's find out who can do that. It says, despite its deadly sting, some creatures do manage to turn the tables on the man-of-war with its many predators, including sea turtles, sunfish, and sea slugs. Wow, interesting. So there are some creatures out there that aren't scared off or intimidated or even threatened by the Portuguese man-of-war. Many animals, well, at least several as we have here, manage to or are able to turn the tables. When you turn the tables on someone, you basically put yourself at an advantage after you have been at a disadvantage. So your enemy has the upper hand, your opponent seems to be winning the game or beating you in a contest, and through some amazing plan or bit of luck or just performing better all of a sudden, you are now able to gain the upper hand, to gain the advantage. They are now the one in danger of losing. You have turned the tables on them. We often see this in sports movies. The big hero will come up when the team is losing, and the hero hits the home run or shoots the three-point shot in the basketball game, and that manages to sort of flip the story, and they turn the tables on the opponents. Now they're going to win, and the opponents who looked sure of winning just moments ago are headed to loss and defeat. So some animals are able to become the predator of the Portuguese man-of-war, when normally many animals would be the prey and the man-of-war would be the predator. So who eats men-of-war? I guess we could say, yeah, sea turtles, sunfish, and sea slugs. So sea turtles, all right, they seem pretty tough if slow-moving. Sunfish are absolutely huge and quite rare, but I could imagine maybe from the shape of their mouth, they have actually similar mouths to sea turtles. And sea slugs, that's one I don't really get. As far as I know, sea slugs live on the bottom of the ocean. How are they ever able to tackle a Portuguese man-of-war is a mystery to me.
Yeah, slugs are kind of dangerous creatures, or at least they're kind of gross and slimy and disgusting. I used to think that slugs were the part of a snail when it left its shell, but that's not the case. They're completely different creatures, although they are kind of similar in that they're worm-like and they're kind of slimy. But even though they're small, they can still turn the tables on the Portuguese man-of-war. In fact, while eating a man-of-war, a sea slug can even store the man-of-war's toxic cells in its own skin to use in its defense. So the man-of-war probably thinks it's going to inflict great harm on the sea slug, and the sea slug says, ha 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 ha, you cannot hurt me. I'm going to take the toxic stuff from your tentacles. I'm going to take the toxins or those toxic cells from your tentacles, and I'm going to store it in my own skin and use it to defend my own self in case somebody else attacks me. So sea slugs aren't afraid of Portuguese men of war. They're going to use the toxic cells in their defense. And defense, of course, is when you're trying to protect yourself. Defense is the noun form, or defense if you're talking about sports. You could say that some basketball players work really hard on defense and don't really work so hard on offense.
And of course, we had also that word toxic, which relates to toxin or poison. If something is toxic, it is poisonous to your body. It could make you sick or even kill you. So, of course, toxic chemicals are things we don't want to have in our food and stuff like that. So these poisonous or toxic cells can be used by the sea slug in its own defense to protect the sea slug from other animals that might want to chew on it or bite it or even eat it. So if a fish comes along and looks a tasty sea slug and it has a big bite, it might get a mouthful of Portuguese man-of-war toxin. That would be a bit of a shock. In contrast, so let's look at another one of these predators of the man-of-war. In contrast, the skin of loggerhead turtles, including that on their tongues and throats, is simply too thick for man-of-war stings to penetrate, allowing the turtles to gobble men-of-war down without injury. So there you go. They're just kind of like a tank, those loggerhead turtles. We think of turtles kind of as tanks because they have those hard shells to protect their bodies, but they also have some internal defenses. The skin of their tongues and throats is too thick for a man-of-war sting to penetrate. That's pretty amazing. I mean, this is kind of like if you walk around without shoes a lot, the skin on the bottom of your feet bite will be very thick, and so walking on rocks or something like that might not cause you pain or injury. In the same way, the tongues and the throats of these turtles, these types of sea turtles, loggerhead turtles are types of sea turtles that swim, they're very, very thick, that skin. So even though the stings should be poisonous and very painful and cause the turtle to spit up what it's eating, it doesn't bother it at all because the sting cannot penetrate. This is very different from human skin, of course, which could easily be penetrated by the toxin of the Portuguese man of war. But the turtles, that's not a problem. This allows the turtles to gobble men of war down without injury. If the stings don't penetrate, that means they don't break through. When something penetrates, it cuts or breaks through. When you get medicine in a hospital, especially if you're getting a shot or a vaccine, they will use a syringe with a needle on the end, and that very sharp needle will be used to penetrate your skin. It creates a tiny little hole, and then it delivers that medicine inside your body. But they need that little needle to penetrate something. In the same way, you might need a needle or a nail or something like that to penetrate through a material like wood or leather or whatever you're trying to make a hole in. So these stings don't penetrate, and this allows loggerhead turtles to eat men of war down without injury or gobble them down. When you gobble something, you're eating probably very quickly. Maybe you're very hungry. It's not a very polite way to eat if you're gobbling, but you're probably doing it for a reason that has nothing to do with being polite. It probably means you're really hungry or the food is really delicious and you're eating as fast as you can.
Right. Remember, you need prepositions with this to gobble up or to gobble down. Gobble also is the word we use to describe the sound a turkey makes. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Okay, let's move on now to the third part of our lesson. We'll listen to it, and then we'll come back to talk about it.
While it's got some enemies, it also has friends. Some fish are partially immune to man-of-war stings, which enables them to gain protection by hiding among a man-of-war's tentacles. Meanwhile, their presence benefits the man-of-war by attracting other fish that it can eat. The man-of-war is pretty peculiar, and the above facts are actually just scratching the surface. If you take a closer look at these unusual animals, you'll be pleasantly surprised by the wealth of information available.
第三部分介绍单字 peculiar， 它是形容词，表示奇特的、古怪的或是独特的。举例来说 ，Simon couldn't eat his pasta because it had a peculiar taste. Simon 没办法吃下他的意大利面，因为有一股奇怪的味道。也可以说 ，The people on the island ate peculiar fruits that I had never seen before. 岛上的人们吃着我从未见过的奇特水果。最后看到片语 scratch the surface， 指的是触及皮毛或是隔靴搔痒。例如 The meeting had been going on for an hour, and the members had still only scratched the surface of what was to be covered. 会议已进行1个小时了，成员们却只触及讨论议题的表面而已。再看一个例子 The topic is huge, and our lecturers will only be able to scratch the surface. 该主题很广泛，而我们的课程将只能触及皮毛而已。
All right, we are back with the final part of our look at the fascinating Portuguese man of war. So the final part of our unit has this title, While it's got some enemies, it also has friends. You might think that since you can get stung by approaching it, by those tentacles, not many people would want to hang around, or not many fish would want to hang around with a Portuguese man of war, but that's not true. It says some fish are partially immune to man of war stings. So there are fish out there that don't get stung. They have some protection on their skin that allows them to touch those tentacles and not get a sting, which enables them to gain protection by hiding among a man-of-war's tentacles. This is kind of like how Nemo, the clownfish, of course, hides in the tentacles of sea anemone and other types of creatures. These creatures would normally sting other fish, but the covering on the skin allows the clownfish to swim around and not get stung. So that's pretty lucky. Meanwhile, their presence the presence of these little fish, benefits the man-of-war by attracting other fish that it can eat. So just having these innocent-looking fish hanging around the man-of-war's tentacles draws in other fish, but those fish are in for a nasty surprise. They will get stung and they will get eaten.
Yep, they serve as bait so they can lure those other fish in, and of course the man-of-war is happy about that. Now here in the final paragraph it says, the man-of-war is pretty peculiar, and the above facts are actually just scratching the surface. Scratching the surface just means we're just talking about only a few things, and of course there are many more things to talk about, and we're also describing the man-of-war as being peculiar, which means rather strange, rather unusual, but maybe fascinating as well. Now, if you take a closer look at these unusual animals, you'll be pleasantly surprised by the wealth of information available. So yes, study them more completely if you're into ocean creatures, and who knows, maybe they have some on display at an aquarium near you. That brings us to the end of our explanation. Here comes our Chinese teacher, Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始提到僧帽水母的触须用于攻击猎物，主要包含小鱼、浮游生物和虾子。那文中是用 consist mainly of 来表达主要包含什么什么。 consist of 有包含或者是由什么组成构成的意思。那它的用法是整体加上 consist of 再加部分，要特别注意它不能用被动语态表示哦。那我们这边也顺便补充其他表达组成构成的方式。第一个，你可以用到片语 make up， 那它的主动用法会是部分 make up 整体，而被动用法则是整体 be made up of 加上部分。举例来说，The book is made up of 10 chapters. 那本书是由10个章节组成的。好，那第二个补充的用法是用动词 compose 来表达组成构成。那这时候用法跟 make up 相同，同样有分成主动和被动的句型，那就可以用部分 compose 加整体，或者是整体 be composed of 再加部分。好，第三个呢，我们可以用动词 comprise 来表达。那它的句型有两种，一个是用整体 comprise 加上部分，或者是整体加上 be comprised of 加上部分。另一个是用部分 comprise 再加上整体。举例来说 The album comprises 10 tracks. 那张专辑是由10首歌曲组成。好，那接着读到课文第二部分，它的小标题写到 As dangerous as it is, it's not invincible. 虽然危险，但它并非所向无敌。句子里面没有出现 though, although, while 之类的连接词，为什么会有虽然但怎么样的那种语义呢？其实句子里面的 as dangerous as it is 也可以写作 dangerous as it is。那这时候形容词 dangerous 后方的 as 意思就相当于 though， 表示虽然尽管。像这样的句型结构，也就是形容词或副词开头，然后加上 as 或者是 though， 加上主词，再加上 be 动词或动词。这样的结构是引导让步副词子句的倒装句型，目的是要强调句首的形容词或副词。那特别注意，句型里面只能用 as 或者是 though， 不可以使用 although。另外，美语当中呢，常会在强调的形容词或副词前面再加上 as， 会写作 as 形容词 as 或者是 as 副词 as， 然后加上主词，加上 be 动词或动词。以课文句子来说，它原本可以写作 Although it is dangerous, it's not invincible. 我们把要强调的形容词 dangerous 移到句首，那前半句就会变成 dangerous although it is。那这时候记得要把 although 改成 as 或是 though， 所以就变成 dangerous as it is 或是 dangerous though it is。那使用 as 的时候 dangerous 前方还可以再加上 as， 就会得到课文的句子啦。 As dangerous as it is, it's not invincible。 好，那以上今天重点整理，我们来回顾今天单字吧。
Prey. Unaware of the danger nearby, the young rabbit soon became the prey of a hungry fox. Paralyze. With a single bite, the spider paralyzed the insect struggling to escape its web. Digest. Due to his recent stomach operation, Clint has trouble digesting certain foods. Toxic. The factory was shut down because it was leaking toxic chemicals into the town's water supply. Defense. During the war, soldiers fought in defense of the country. Penetrate. The arrow fired by the enemy soldier was unable to penetrate the knight's thick armor. Peculiar. Josephine became nervous when she heard a peculiar noise coming from the basement.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter. The question is, which of the facts about Portuguese men of war mentioned in the article did you find most bizarre and why?
I thought the fact that Portuguese men of war have tentacles that can remain toxic even when they're not attached was the strangest one, since now I'm a little worried about going to the beach.
Well, to my mind, the oddest fact mentioned was that those loggerhead turtles have thick skin and thick tongues, so they cannot be affected by the stings of the Portuguese man of war, so they can just swim about without any care in the world in the ocean, and they don't need to be afraid of those evil creatures.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Mike.
I am Roger. See you next time.